5. Okay, now you're good.
All right, we're 5 minutes behind schedule, so I need to get going. So every year I give a talk. I call it the State of the Washington Blueberry Industry. I'm going to do you guys a favor. I'm going to shorten my talk. We're going to give some extra time. We're going to add a speaker. So after I speak, we have two very talented individuals from the U.S. Highbush Blueberry Council. And then when they get done, we're going to have Casey Cronquist, who is the president of the U.S. Highbush Council, get up and talk a little bit. So let's jump into, here's my report card. First of all, I want to acknowledge that these are board members from Whatcom County. Todd Van Mersbergen, who's in the back, he is the chair. Paul Senga, also from Whatcom County, is the vice chair. And if you look at what folks are, we've got conventional, we've got organic, we've got processed, we've got fresh. We have a really nice group of a very representative board, and I think they try very hard to do a good job and represent the interests of the blueberry industry. So this is a 10-year snapshot and percent change. And if you look over here, overall, we've had a meteoric rise in the amount of blueberries. I started doing this in 2006, and we had 18 million pounds in that year. But what is interesting is, up, down a little bit, up, flat, up, down, and oh my God, what happened? That's just shocking. We had been so used to this upward curve that it was just kind of hard to believe that we could go down. This is the first time we'd ever seen something like that in the history. Oregon and British Columbia had some irregular and unexpected low production for several years. BC had been a reliable 175 million pounds, and they were down a lot. But for us, the increase in Eastern Washington buffered any of the up and down cycles that BC and Oregon had. And so we just pretty much always went up. But for the first time, all the growing regions in Washington faced a downturn in production, mainly because of cool weather during pollination and some regional weather and pest issues. Now this reduction resulted in a complete drought in frozen blueberry supplies, and it kept the price up. But I think that will be a temporary situation. So what happened in 2024? Well, okay, there's 2023. So in 2023, we were 22% down from our high point of 71 million, which is in 2022. Assessments are due at the end of October, but there's a loophole. There's a 30-day grace period before we can go after people for being late. And so what that means is we get all of our assessments at the end of November. As of November 30th, November 30th is the due date. As of yesterday, we've collected on 190 million pounds. A couple growers, a couple processors haven't paid their assessments yet. We've got the check is in the mail for 7.6 million pounds. I think there's another 5 million pounds at the very least, is available. So at the very least, we're looking at 203 million pounds, could be more. So first place in the United States, Canada, that's hit 200 million pounds. I estimate 75% processed, which means the rest is fresh. We I had projected 68% was going to be processed, but we got this massive surge in Northwest Washington. And there's also some quality issues that forced a lot to go processed. We actually have been on a slow trend of increasing fresh, except for this year, because it was so big that the processors took. There's one processor in this county that took in more than double what their 5-year average has taken. I don't know how they did it all. Anyway, 50 million went to fresh. I project 50 million pounds are organic, 70% of which is fresh. And there could be more than 50 million pounds. We don't collect data on whether it's organic or conventional. That's me reading the tea leaves of knowing who produces what. And again, these all these numbers except for the assessment number, the 200 million or whatever, that's a real number. I mean, that's like we got money in the bank, and I guarantee you if they paid assessments, they produced them. I don't know if they paid all their assessments, but we know that there's at least that much. All the other things split between processed and fresh, organic, etc., is my best guess. And I think my guess is better than anyone else's, but if someone can make my numbers more accurate, let me know. If you want to know what everybody else did this year, here you go. British Columbia, Paul, where are you, Paul? Right here. Paul Price. He is the new Alan Schreiber of British Columbia. He's my new counterpart there. Is 180 up? Is that a record for you? Do you know? Yeah, they had a good season. Oregon had a good season. And so here's the splits. What's that? I can't hear you. 205 in 2019. Okay, there you go. So 180 million pounds produced in BC, 112 of that went to the US. Chile produced 432 million pounds, exported 259 fresh, 173 frozen, were their number one target. There's Mexico, 260 million pounds, all fresh, mostly exported to the US. Peru, more than 1 billion pounds, and we're their biggest export market. Everyone's coming here. So I want to mention a story. In 2018, I was in Singapore peddling blueberries. At that point in June, July, August, late June, July, August, Washington, Oregon, and British Columbia was the only place in the world that they could get blueberries from. I thought we were going to clean up. COVID hit, complicated everything. I went back in 2023, talked to some of the same people, and they said that over the course of the year, they were offered blueberries from 30 different growing regions. Everyone wants to get in blueberries, and everyone that's getting into blueberries right now are getting into it not to feed their population, but to export. So what's going to happen in 2025? Who knows? It would be a fool's errand to guess, but that's what I'm going to do. So here's some assumptions. So 200 million pounds was result of more fields coming into fully bearing status, near ideal growing season, and good growing seeds for most of the season. That's I know you got 2 inches in rain, but one grower said that rain knocked off 250,000 pounds, and he still had record yields. So we could have been at 215, 220. Somebody told me that they had 2 million pounds of fruit knocked off and still had a record. But we're not going to have ideal conditions in all season in all the growing areas. And also, it's my belief. I should be coming up with a more technical way of saying this, but I think the high yields of 2024 is going to tax the plant. The plants aren't going to produce as much. I think we'll be lucky if we get 180 million pounds next year. That's my estimate. Now, people like me for all the growing regions are forced to make a projection. And this is what everybody's projections are for 2025. But also I'll tell you, you can take a picture of this, but no one this isn't what the numbers are going to be, but I can tell you that's what people think. Um, I told you there's a trend of increased fresh pack, and organic production is going to continue to increase, and they're primarily targeting the fresh market. The low frozen price is pushing growers into the fresh market. Um, I would say 90% of conventional fresh blueberries in Washington are machine picked. 100% of organic is hand picked. If we could machine pick fresh everything, there'd hardly be any process left. So what are we going to do about this big blue pile? Well, the U.S. High Bush is going to take care of it for us. They're going to talk next. Um, but I want to show you, we have a draft budget. Now, this is based on 180 million pounds because my board made me say we're going to have 180 million pounds, and that's what we're going to base our budget on. Now that we have 200 million, we got an extra $80,000 to spend, which is not reflected in the numbers I'm going to show you. But this is our draft budget. We're going to do 85,000 for domestic promotion in state. We're going to do 50,000 of frozen South Korea promotion. We have 15,000 that we're putting into an Indonesia, Thailand promotion, tied with 87,500 special crop block grant money. 20,000 goes to NABC for trade support. We are going to in 2025 do a massive Indian promotion in India. We are willing to put some money, if asked, for a Costco promotion. Research is flat. We're not getting enough research proposals, so we're not growing that market. Our administrative costs are obviously, as percentage basis, much lower than Western Red Raspberry Commissions, but they're relatively flat in face of a growing budget. One thing I'm going to point out here is we had a $113,000 carryover. There is, and I'm telling you, we are looking to spend this money. We're thinking about putting 20,000 in state issues, maybe do something in Olympia, this industrial outreach, like helping fund this meeting. We have theoretically $1 million budget, but 197,000 of that is from USDA Special Crop Block Grant. This is $802,000 of grower dollars, which I'll get to. So this is our financial calculus. When we thought we had a 180 million pound crop, 722,000, we had a lot of carryover. Our policy is 10% of our assessments go into reserve fund. So at 720,000, it's 72,000. We had 410, we're going to add 72. We will have 482. Now that number is going to go up to 490, but we have some money to spend. We're looking for new programming activities. It would be the easiest, the path of least resistance is just to keep dumping it into research if we can get proposals, and to dump it into marketing. But we're wondering if there's new things that we should be doing, get involved with state issues. And no, I'm not going to fund Whatcom County's water ag board or any water problems. That's a county issue, not a state issue. Increase domestic marketing. We could increase export market development, host buyers tour, increase research, start a private organization to handle some issues. These are just some ideas. We're interested in input on how we can spend our money to help Washington blueberry growers. We could even give our money to USHBC to spend. Casey can spend money. And so we could give it to him. In fact, we do, but I will get to that. So we boosted our money from 2023. We were at 35,000. We boosted to 85,000 to do more in-store promotion. One of the things we did, we've never done before, is we did a promotion just targeting organic. First of all, we did an Albertson and Safeway where they promoted conventional Washington blueberries. Okay, I don't know I haven't heard the story on how they got to this, but they said they increased sales of conventional blueberries in those stores in that window in August, 2.2 for increased sales by 2.2 million. In Kroger, we did an organic one. This is really tricky. We did not realize, we assumed we'd go to a store and they would be buying Washington or not Washington. As it turns out, a lot of the grocery stores can't differentiate whether it's British Columbia, Oregon, or Washington blueberries. So that was a real tricky deal, but we're able to thread that needle. Um, we even did some promotions in Oregon for organic blueberries. And then we have some other work we're doing to try and get consumers to buy. We contributed $135,000 to the NABC, which transferred to the USHBC, to do export market activities on our behalf. USHBC has got a very talented set of in-country marketing reps. I don't know how many they got. We may hear that next, but they manage some programs for us. There's no overhead. We give them a buck, they spend it, and they don't keep it. And in those situations, they can do the work cheaper and more effectively than if I did it myself. This isn't a great picture, but this is one of the things we had the USHBC do was a frozen blueberry food manufacturing workshop in Malaysia. This is a picture where the event took place. We've done this for 2 years. And this is we're going to do it for 2 years. Last year was the end of it unless we choose to continue it. So why Malaysia of all places? Well, as a very low tariff, they want blueberries. It is an Islamic country, and everything process has to have a halal certification. And Malaysia has an unusually strict level of certification. Most blueberry processors in the world can't go to Malaysia because they are not halal certified. We've got several people that are halal certified. We think that helps us keep out the competition. I see Paul writing notes down. Get halal certified in British Columbia. If we're going to continue this, we need at least 35,000. But I'll tell you, as a result of this effort, we have 2 Washington processors that are now shipping containers of frozen blueberries to Malaysia. South Korea, we've worked for 3 years. We've got a way, the USHBC has a way of identifying stores that only receive frozen Washington blueberries. This is one of the most, as a science guy, I find marketing a little distasteful because you can't measure it. You can't really tell if it's successful. You always wonder if it's working. But this is one where they actually measure the rate of sales beforehand, during, and afterwards. And we commonly see when we do the promotions, the numbers go up sharply. And when we stop the promotion, they go down, but they do not go down at the same rate that they were before. And so this has been some of the easiest money for us to spend. We're planning to continue this project in 2025. We worked for 6 years to lower the tariff on blueberries in India, and we just don't see much marketing attention being spent there. We wanted to work there. We knew of 2 Washington processors shipping to India. One of us told us to go suck eggs, and the other one wanted to work with us. So we developed with the USHBC a $30,000 aftermarket frozen program. I don't know why there is not more attention in India. I think India is an unbelievable opportunity for us. And I think we should be there in a much bigger fashion. And we are. We are going to spend we have a $220,000 grant plus 30,000 we're going to put in. So a total of 250,000 next 2 years to go after India. Our single biggest line item, well, no, I guess promotion is our biggest line item. Research is our second biggest line item. We've always been a research funding commission. We have a research committee, sets priorities, ranks proposals, make recommendations. We have a really good research research committee. We fund a lot of projects. Leighton's the chair. He does good work. Here's a list of some products. This is the fungicide resistance work. Here's work that I'm doing on conventional organic control of mummy-bearing botrytis, what I've been talking about. Resistance detection, Louis Nottingham and I are working on bacterial canker, bee pollinator safe aphid programs. A lot of presentations. We are trying to work with the British Columbia Blueberry Council and establish some long-term funding of us into their program. That's been a little bit more complicated to get done than I had hoped. I will give an example of a couple of these projects we're funding. Tom Walters, are you in the back there? We're funding him to manage this. In South Park, they had a song "Blame Canada." Well, we're getting all of our viruses. It seems like they're coming. There must be a north wind coming, and we're getting all these viruses from Canada. But they developed a virus surveillance program that we are shamelessly copying here, where growers can give samples. They can ship them. The Blueberry Commission pays for it. The samples get sent up to British Columbia. You get the results back. We don't get the results. There's a process for doing this. Talk to Tom. Here are some results. We had 8 growers participate in it. Presumably, this is not necessarily representative. Presumably, people had symptoms, and so they sent them in. But a lot of scorch, a lot of shock. Not shocking. But we would like to have a lot more growers take advantage of this. So see Tom about this. We need to submit samples submitted. This is some work done by Machapali. I will tell you what, I'm given 6 talks. This is my 4th one, and it's the 3rd time I've used this slide. Chalks did this research, and they sampled gray mold. This is in blueberries. 25% were susceptible, 13% were resistant to one class of fungicides, 12% were resistant to 2 classes, 15% 3 classes, 24% were resistant to almost everything, and 11% were literally resistant to every fungicide they screened against them. This is I call this is Armageddon. Here's pristine boscalid. When you get resistance, it's nothing. Nothing will work on it. I can explain the slide in another lifetime, but it's an awful deal. The commission is looking for feedback and input. How do we spend our money? How do we not spend our money? Give us some direction. So, who's next? I'm not going to take any questions. Alyssa, are you? Okay. So I am happy to introduce Alyssa Hotby, Director of Government Affairs for the North American Blueberry Council, and I'll let you introduce Haiying. So,
Oh, wonderful. Good. We've got reinforcements.
Yes. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. As Ellen said, my name is Alyssa Halpy. I'm the Director of Government Affairs for the North American Blueberry Council. And while she's getting my slides up, I do want to start by just level setting and making sure that everyone is aware that we operate 2 different organizations, one being the North American Blueberry Council and the second being the U.S. Highbush Blueberry Council. And my colleague Haiying will speak after me about what the U.S. HBC is doing in terms of market development. But in my side of the house, I focus on government affairs. I focus on the policy side of things and advocacy. And when we're talking about export market access and trade in general, underneath the North American Blueberry Council umbrella, we're talking about advocacy, making sure that we have markets open and that there are no barriers so that Haiying and the USHBC side and the Washington Blueberry Commission can do their great work on the marketing side and really growing demand. So today, this is a little agenda for my part of the conversation today, really starting off with differentiating what market access is versus market development. And then I'll give an update on some of the market access requests we're working on, where we stand there. And then at the end, I do want to spend quite a bit of time today talking about what ag trade policy looks like under the incoming Trump administration. I know everyone is probably sick of talking about politics, but there's a lot happening in the ag trade space, a lot to be excited about. So I do want to cover that with you today as well. And then, of course, the Farm Bill, because believe it or not, the Farm Bill does touch a lot of programs that influence our ability to export. So what is market access versus market development? Well, like I said, the North American Blueberry Council is the advocacy arm. So we're advocating for new or improved market access. And then the U.S. Highbush Blueberry Council comes in and does the market development work. And again, Haiying will cover that in more detail. But together, working collectively, these 2 organizations are really important in ensuring that markets are open, they're accessible, and that there is consumer demand there so that you can sell your blueberries. So our role, like I said, we advocate for new or improved market access. We work to eliminate tariff and non-tariff barriers, and we advocate for USDA export programs. We engage with USTR during trade and negotiations, which I am really excited, honestly, coming into the next 4 years. I think we're going to see a lot more movement in terms of bilateral agreements, a lot of opportunity to address some longstanding tariff and non-tariff issues for the blueberry industry. We're also monitoring MRL changes, and we advocate for harmonized MRLs. And I think this is a really an area that doesn't get enough attention, but can be a significant export market barrier if there are MRLs that are not harmonized with U.S. Tolerance levels, especially when we talk about countries like India. We just got the tariff reduced down to 10%, which is great. India does not have MRLs, and they do not currently do a lot of testing, or at least there's no formalized way of testing. So looking ahead, we're preparing to make sure that that does not become a barrier for India, knowing that it is such an opportunity for the blueberry industry, especially up here in Washington. Technical assistance for specialty crops. I do want to highlight this here because we are working on two, we submitted 2 proposals for task funding with the Washington Blueberry Commission. We haven't heard back from USDA yet if those projects will be funded, but if they are, these are 2 projects we'll be working on in 2025. One dealing with increasing the number of chemistries that are currently available in the residue decline curve. So we're seeking funding to do an initial 20 decline curves. The second, and Alan did spend a lot of time talking about botrytis issues and that. So the second program here would be to establish a Japanese MRL and Codex MRL for iprodione and blueberries, understanding that botrytis is such a big concern, and iprodione is a tool in that toolbox. Japan recently revoked the MRL for that chemistry because there's not enough data to continue it. So what this project would do would be the field studies, basically, to turn that data over to Japan to restate that MRL. All right, so I'm going to move into just an update on some of the market access requests. There are 2 here that I'm going to focus on more, and then I'll give you a rundown of some of the smaller markets. But Japan is the tariff on the frozen blueberries. It's a huge issue. It's been an issue for a number of years, essentially since the USJTA came into force. By mistake, the tariff on frozen blueberries was left on. So there is a 9.6% tariff on sweetened blueberries and a 6% tariff on unsweetened frozen blueberries. You all know that that has resulted in an erosion of the U.S. market share in this market, particularly to our friends to the north in Canada. They've been able to capture a lot of that market share because they do have 0% tariff going into Japan. We have raised this issue a number of times with the Biden administration, with USDA, as well as the embassy in Tokyo. And I can tell you that from Japan's perspective, this is not an issue. They do not grow a significant amount of blueberries in Japan. However, they are not unilaterally going to remove a tariff unless the importing country asks for it. And I can tell you in the last 4 years under the Biden administration, there has been 0 movement on anything related to tariffs, including a simple fix like the tariff on frozen blueberries. So as much as we've been working on this issue and pounding the table and talking to every agency that deals with tariff and trades, there's been absolutely no movement. So one thing I am looking forward to in the next few years is an opportunity in this new administration that is more bullish on bilateral agreements, especially when it comes to an agreement that they negotiated in the first Trump administration. So I do see Japan is a willing trading partner. They're a willing negotiating partner, and now we'll have an incoming administration that is more inclined to have those conversations than the current administration has. I will say that we have also entered into an agreement with DTB Agritrade. They are a very prominent firm based in DC that specializes in addressing tariff and non-tariff barriers. So they're doing a SWOT analysis for us, really level setting what is the playing field with Japan? What is the opportunity to fix this? So rest assured, this is a top priority for the North American Blueberry Council. And again, looking forward to the opportunities to work on that in the next few years. South Korea. So the objective with South Korea right now is to open the market for U.S. fresh blueberries from Washington and California. Currently, only Oregon has access. It took Oregon 15 years or so to get access. And since Oregon got access, we've been working to expand that access for California and Washington. But South Korea moves very slow on trade agreements and negotiations. They do one market access request at a time. And for the past 7 years, they've been focused on potatoes. Well, that is about to wrap up. But like blueberries, potatoes asked for expansion of their market access to an additional 15 states, I believe. It took 7 years to get that done. We are asking for an addition of 2 with no real changes to the phytosanitary agreements, basically copy and paste of what Oregon does and extend it out to California and Washington. Pest profiles are similar enough. We hope that there won't be any cause for delay in negotiating that, since it should be simple. But all that to say, we still anticipate it might take up to 5 years to get that done. And of course, what the news this week with the president of Korea basically being overthrown, that might also delay things. We'll see. Also, I want to highlight that we are shipping, of course, frozen blueberries to South Korea, but there is an issue with the organic equivalency agreement, particularly with spinosad. So an organic equivalency agreement essentially says that the importing country will abide by the U.S. organic standard, even if their domestic organic standard is different. In the case of South Korea, organic means 0 pesticide tolerance. Well, it doesn't mean that in the United States, as you well know. There are organic chemistries, there are tolerance levels for organic insecticides, spinosad being one. And it has been brought to our attention that customers in South Korea, they do their own testing. They find residues that are within the limits based on our organic standards, but since they find anything at all, it doesn't meet the Korean standard, and they reject the product. So like I said, regarding tariffs with Japan, this administration has been slow moving on addressing phytosanitary issues and issues with organic equivalency agreements and that sort of thing. So the hope again is that going into this next administration, we're just going to have a more excitement, more enthusiasm about really getting in and working on these non-tariff barriers. All right, some other pending access requests that we're working on. Australia and New Zealand, many of these, including Australia and New Zealand, have been in the works for many, many years. Australia, they've got some things that they want from the US with apples and oranges. So there's a bit of a quid pro quo going on with Australia. There was some pushback on the data that we had regarding blueberry maggot and spotted wing Drosophila. That research was done and it was submitted to Australia this year. Australia has not responded that they've even looked at it yet. It's moving slow. New Zealand is moving a little bit quicker, which is positive. Actually, we just today heard from USDA APHIS that they are doing a bilateral meeting with New Zealand in March, or excuse me, in February, and USDA has asked for blueberries, our market access, to be top of the list of things to discuss. New Zealand has all the information they need, the pest profiles, the data, the ball's in their court. So we're happy to hear that APHIS is pushing them on it, and hopefully we'll have more information coming out of that bilateral in February. South Africa, another small market, but it is one that we don't currently have access to for fresh blueberries. They have a big blueberry industry of their own. This has been a frustrating exchange with South Africa, a lot of going back and forth, them agreeing to the phytosanitary agreements that we've laid out and the protocols that we've laid out, especially regard to blueberry maggot and spotted wing Drosophila. And then they come back and say they changed their mind, and it's been a lot of back and forth, but we're holding firm on a systems approach into South Africa, knowing that this is not a big priority market, so we're not willing to give much here. Like we know the protocol we want to go in with, and the science stands it up. And that's where we're at with negotiations with South Africa. Israel, there's a lot happening in Israel right now. We're not pushing them too hard to move forward on the blueberry request. They have all the information, but before everything started happening in the Middle East, they were moving forward with it. So once things are a little bit more stable in Israel, I suspect that they'll pick this up and it should be pretty turnkey. Again, it's a small market. We're not pushing too hard for it. And again, knowing the geopolitical landscape that we're dealing with there. Already talked about South Korea. We are also seeking to expand access to chili for the Eastern US. As China is a frustrating market for a lot of reasons, but I don't suspect that we'll see a lot of positive movement to China anytime soon. We've already talked about Japan. There are tariffs in a lot of markets that we go to. And the Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, Taiwan, the list goes on. And so our strategy going into this next administration is day one, make sure that they are aware that these are the tariff barriers that exist for us increasing our export programs to these markets, where maybe we're sending some fruit to, but it could be more if we had a more favorable tariff situation, especially in relation to our competitors. Peru is going around the world, entering into free trade agreements with every country, and that country and that blueberry industry has been set up to export. And so we're lagging behind Peru in that sense, and that our systems are not necessarily there, and our trade agreements are not as aggressive as Peru has been. I already talked about India. That tariff, as you know, was reduced to 10%, and we're making sure that we're not going to run into any of these non-tariff barriers related to MRLs in the future. Right. Looking ahead, this is more of the political side of the conversation today. The Trump tariff and trade agenda, like the slide says, past is pretense. Nobody should be surprised at all with everything that's been announced recently regarding tariffs, with potentially imposing tariffs against Canada and Mexico and increasing the tariff against China. This is the Trump strategy, the America First strategy. No new multilateral agreements, greater focus on bilateral agreements, and tariffs are not an empty threat, but they are certainly a negotiating tactic. I don't foresee that the tariff actually does get imposed on Mexico and Canada. I think the tactic of using it as a bargaining strategy to address the fentanyl and illegal immigration issues is enough to address those challenges and not actually see the tariff happen. Some of the challenges with threatening tariffs, like we saw in the last Trump administration, of course, is retaliatory tariffs. And that can lead and did lead to reduced market share and market instability. For many commodities that did export quite a bit to China, they've never regained those markets. And we in the blueberry industry have a 50% tariff on going into China. Not a lot of opportunity in that market. So that is always the challenge and the downside to a very aggressive tariff strategy. But opportunities, I focused a lot on those. They are the long-standing tariff and non-tariff barriers that we've been dealing with. We saw under the previous Trump administration with US JTA, with the Japan Free Trade Agreement. They got it wrong on frozen blueberries, but other than that, we have 0% tariff on fresh and dried. We also saw improvements to Korea's free trade agreement. So again, when we look at the opportunities in this administration and positioning the blueberry industry to capture those opportunities, it's in the bilateral conversations. And of course, the USMCA is up for review in 2026. That's not necessarily a complete renegotiation like we saw under the previous Trump administration. It is a review, and it's an opportunity, if we treat it as such, to address some tariff, well, it would be non-tariff barriers. And there are other commodities, especially the dairy industry and the corn industry, that are going to look at the USMCA review as a way to finally address some of those issues that they've had. It is an area that the North American Blueberry Council is uniquely positioned to engage, since we do represent North America, the US, Canada, and Mexico. So the takeaway, I think, for looking at the Trump administration and trade policy is that we're going to focus our messaging on how export markets benefit U.S. farmers and rural communities, and make sure that that message is not lost. Agriculture does historically get we are, unfortunately, we suffer the consequences of trade wars. And the focus now is to make sure that doesn't happen to the extent that we can for the blueberry industry. Continuing on, Trump tariff and trade agenda. So there have been some announcements recently with regard to cabinet picks, as well as Trump did announce, I believe yesterday, that he will be bringing back Peter Navarro to be his senior counsel for trade. Both Peter Navarro, the Commerce Secretary pick, Howard Lutnick, and the USTR pick, Jamison Greer, they're all cut from the same cloth. They all are very much protectionist when it comes to trade. They are pro-tariff, and they are very critical of multilateral agreements. So again, past this pretense, this is not surprising, and we will figure out a way to work through this and seize the opportunities where they exist. I will say that the USTR pick, Jamison Greer, he was the chief of staff for the previous USTR, Robert Lighthizer, in the last Trump administration. He was very instrumental in a lot of the ag parts of Chorus as well as USMCA. So he's familiar with ag issues. There's a real opportunity here to make sure he is working on the issues that we care about most beyond what we read in the news about USMCA and China. There's a lot more to trade policy that someone like Jamison Greer is going to be really helpful on for us. All right, moving on to the Farm Bill. I do want to spend just a moment here, realizing we're short on time for Haing to come up. Farm Bill, we're looking at a 1-year extension, which will be included in a continuing resolution to fund the government into the next year. I want to highlight that Representative Costa, Democrat from the Central Valley of California, which is also the largest blueberry growing region in the state, is challenging the current ranking member of the House Ag Committee, David Scott from Georgia, for that position. Representative Scott is also the co-chair of the Specialty Crop Caucus and the Ag Trade Caucus. He invited us to speak at a briefing for the Ag Trade Caucus earlier this year about the export opportunities for blueberries. He's very familiar with our industry and what trade means to us, and would be a very strong ally to us going into the Farm Bill negotiations next year to make sure that these trade programs that we're relying on, like the Market Access Program, TASC, Quality Samples Program, all the things that Haing is going to talk about, he's the one that'll be really carrying the mantle for us in ensuring that those programs are well funded in the next Farm Bill. So we're excited to see him potentially become the next ranking member. When you look at the leadership of the House and Senate Ag Committees, they're called the Four Corners. You've got the chair, which is the majority party of the House Ag Committee, the ranking member, the minority party for the House Ag Committee, and then the same on the Senate side. So we already know who the chairs are going to be. There's no surprise there. It's Chair G.T. Thompson on the House side and Senator John Boozman on the Senate side. The Democrats have already elected ranking member, or Amy Klobuchar from Nebraska, to be the ranking member on the Senate side. It's really to be determined on the House side who that ranking member is. And if you look at those four quadrants, there's no specialty crop representation now that Debbie Stabenow has retired. Debbie Stabenow is from Michigan. So again, having somebody like Jim Costa, who represents specialty crops and is from a specialty crop producing region, will be incredibly helpful. Again, knowing that the Farm Bill has been punted into the next year and some pieces of it are going to be renegotiated. All right, and I pretty much covered all of this, but these are the areas of the Farm Bill that touch ag trade policy. It's really about funding and authorizing the programs that we rely on. And some of these are more directly related to exports, and some of them are indirectly related. And you're familiar with this because the Washington Blueberry Commission does get specialty crop block grants, and you're probably involved in SCRI and mechanization. I do want to back up really quick and let you know that we are working to address some trade agreements that require fresh blueberries to be hand harvested. We're working to modify those agreements to include mechanical harvesting. Just a side note regarding mechanization, knowing that that is a trend that the industry is taking on the fresh side of things. So that's a rundown of ag policy, what NABC does in terms of trade and supporting USHBC's market development work. There's a lot more that I could talk about today, all the other areas that we're working on, whether it's labor, crop insurance. We've got our hands in a lot of things for the blueberry industry. And your opportunity to really engage with us in policy making and make your voices heard is at our hill climb. That will be in March of 2025. Our home base will be in Alexandria, but we'll go up to the Hill. We'll have meetings with members of Congress and the administration. It'll be a fun time to be in DC with new appointments being made. Tax policy will be top of the agenda. Farm bill will be negotiated, and there's a lot of opportunity to talk with USTR about the markets that we want to address in terms of tariffs and non-tariff barriers. I encourage you to attend if you're able, and you can scan that QR code to register. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Haiying to talk about USHBC's Global Market Development Program. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, is it too loud? All right. Thank you, Alyssa. As you can tell that Alyssa has shared with you, we are working really hard to open up the markets in the export space. So my job is really once the market is open, we have access to those markets. We want to communicate to consumers so we can increase the demand, to build demand so they can buy more of your blueberries. So again, my name is Haiying Zhang, and I am the Director of Global Business Development at USHBC. So because this is, are you seeing that? Okay. Because for me, this is the first time for me to meet many of you. So I would like to take a few minutes just to give you a quick introduction about who I am so you have a certain level of confidence about who you are listening to. I actually joined USHBC in June 2024. Prior to that, I worked in another ag commodity group for American pistachio growers. First as director of and then senior director of global marketing communications. So my primary responsibility was to drive demand in the global space for U.S. pistachios. I worked very closely in that position with our in-country market representatives, PR agencies, advertising agencies to really design the strategies and oversee execution, also managing budgets in those space. And also learned quite a bit about how to manage and securing USDA grants. So during my tenure in the pistachio industry, the industry went through tremendous, remarkable growth. And in the most recent crop year, the production reached 1.4 billion pounds. And more remarkably is the demand and consumption for pistachios actually increased significantly and largely propelled by really the growth in the export space. Just as a reference point, export as a percent of production went from about 59% to 62% in the course of 10 years. Now, export as a percent of total shipment increased from about 65% to 78%. So yes, in the most recent crop year, 23-24 crop year, more than 78% of the production shipment actually went to the export space. So with that in mind, since joining USHBC, we have been very busy working with Alyssa and the other marketing team to really execute our 2024 and also building a vision for 2025. So I would like to quickly share with you what we have done, our vision for 2025, and also share with you some of the excellent resources we have at UHBC that can help you to grow export business. And lastly, share with you some success stories we are currently with our current programs. So our strategy for 2025 in the export space are really focused on these three pillars. First, we're going to execute a global unified marketing campaign strategy. And second, we are going to elevate demand focused promotional efforts. Lastly, we are going to create very tactical, customized executions in each of the global markets. And if we do all of the three things on the left in the lighter blue box, this will help us to increase sales for your blueberries, all blueberries. So that is why it's not going to be an overnight deal, but if we do this consistently over time, this will lead us to increase sales of your blueberries. So first, let's take a look at, I'm going to address each of these points here. First, you're looking at the key export markets for USA blueberries. Now, we are very active. We have marketing efforts. We have marketing programs in Japan, South Korea, China, limited base, India, we do have in India. I'll talk a little bit more later. And then Southeast Asia, including Vietnam, the Philippines, and Malaysia. And next year, we're thinking about also looking at Mexico, if provided we have funding. So what do I mean by consistent, unified messaging? Well, in marketing, we talk about reputation. Reputation sells. If you want something to stick, you need to say it. You need to say it, repeat it over and again consistently. So one of the things that we want to achieve is three things. Our marketing communications, no matter what markets you're in, we're going to focus on the three key messaging points for USA blueberries. First is convenient. What do I mean by that? Well, USA blueberry is a healthy snack that you can enjoy anywhere, any occasions, anytime. Okay. Second, versatile. We have so many product forms that can be applied in so many applications, cuisines. Okay. Third is healthy, nutritious. Well, we know that our blueberries are packed with nutritional values, right? So all of those, no matter what export market you are, we're going to communicate those. We're going to focus on those. Okay. And the second element or pillar is we are going to focusing on driving demand. Okay. Why is that important for us to drive demand? As Alan mentioned to you earlier, we see the production has increased in the state of Washington. We also see that production is increasing domestically. And more importantly, they're really increasing, they're expanding in the international space. There are new varieties, there are new players coming to the place, to the blueberry industry every single year. So the supply is growing. If you want to have a healthy grower return, we need to make sure that we have a lot more customers are buying your blueberries around the world. But the fact is today, there are really just very few percentage of population in the world are actually buying blueberries. So with that in mind, we're actually, if you look at the left-hand side of the slide, we're going to use this AIDA model to help us to guide us through to build demand. Okay, this is a model that really utilized by a lot of consumer product goods companies, such as the brands like Nike, like Apple, like Procter & Gamble. Okay, it recognizes that consumers go through 4 stages when they make purchase of a product. Okay, they start with awareness, meaning they have to be aware of your product. They have to be aware of all the brand messages that I was describing earlier, the 3 key messaging points. They have to be heard of us. Secondly is stage 2, stage 3 is they have to, for some of those who are aware of your product, will actually form an interest. And then some who are interested in our product will eventually form a desire. And then some of those individuals will actually decide that they will actually make the purchase. So if you look at this shape, it's a funnel shape. If you want to continuously grow your brand, increase your sales, you have to make sure that you have a large customer base on top. So we are going to use transformational promotional techniques to increase, to create the buzz. So let customers around the world to know about USA blueberries. And then we are going to use a lot of advertising, media tour, press release, and we're going to engage with local influencers around the world to really create the interest, build the interest, so they have a desire for your product. And if that 3 steps above all happens, that will lead to the action part. We will see more consumers purchasing your product. And that is what we are set forth to do in 2025. Okay, the third pillar of our strategy is we know there are many, many nuances in each of the local markets. So we have to really customize on the execution side with very specific customized executions. Meaning, okay, for example, I talked about earlier, one of the key messages is the convenient part. Blueberries, USA blueberries can be enjoyed at any occasions, any times. In America, in the US, well, football is a great season that we can promote blueberries. But in India, it's not football, it's cricket. Okay. Holiday season, Thanksgiving or Christmas is a great holiday here for us. But in India, we're talking about Diwali. Okay. So we have to be mindful. We have to know all of those specific occasions, specific time that help us to build very customized promotional plan. So first 3 steps we're following. I'm not going to, I think with timing, I'm not going to go through details, but just so know that we are actively gathering data in each of these markets by conducting consumer and industry usage and attitude studies right now in 2025. And with those data, this knowledge, we'll build customized plans. And we're also going to track every single activities to make sure that we are effectively using all the fundings. So with that in mind, first, with customization, we need to make sure that we understand each of the market. We have done a deep dive in all the markets. We customize our markets into 4 groups, starting with developed growth markets. And then we're moving to the emerging growth market and exploratory market. And China is actually in its own category. So why do we want to do that? This helps us to decide what fundings, how are we going to best support the growth in these markets. And one of the market research that USHBC study that we have is done in 2023 through Euromonitor. We really looked at 27 key USA blueberry markets and look at 17 variables and did a scoreboard analysis on them. And then we ranked all the opportunities here. So if you can see that all of that are markets that we are actually going to, I'm trying to get back to the slide here. Can we go back to the previous slide? So the one we have in the growth and emergency growth actually are the top 10. And then the others are falling a little bit in the lower tier. So with that in mind, I do want to share a little bit about how we're going to fund these markets. If you look at the top of the slide, I listed all the USDA grants that we are planning to use to support these markets. Alyssa has already mentioned to you some of the grants, and I have more acronyms to share with you here. RAP stands for Regional Agricultural Promotion Programs. This is a new program for 2025. And the nuances about this one is it cannot be spent in Canada and Mexico. And then we have our Market Access Program and GBI, a Quality Sample Program. EMP is Emergency Market Program. So these are the fundings that we're planning to secure, we have applied for. I spent a lot of time securing and managing these grants. And I want you guys to know that these grants, the process is very competitive. It's not USDA really look at the quality of our applications and also how we manage, execute, how do we report, how do we communicate, are we staying compliant? So with all of that, but we are working really hard to secure as many grants as we can on behalf of the blueberry industry. So this is the kind of the potential resources that we are looking at for 2025. And on the grant side, we're anticipating at $2 million. Now, we don't have the entire $2 million in the bank yet. All of the 2 million, 1.3 from REP is in the bank. We are already awarded. And we are expecting to receive another allocation, the tranche 2 at the end of this month. And then the rest, market access, QSP, emergent EMP, we estimated based on historical levels. So this is again tied to the farm bill that Lisa mentioned earlier. So industry contribution, as you can see. So in retrospective, so in 2025, we're going to have more funding, okay? And this is your international teams. I work very closely with these folks. They're in-country market representatives, and we are actively building out our plans for 2025. At USHBC, from the marketing side, I'll work very closely with Kevin. Some of you might already know him. And so we are ready. I hope you can feel the sense of confidence that I have. And we're ready and to grow our export business on your behalf. And then let me show you an example how we actually put our experience or strategy to use. As Ellen mentioned, WBC actually contributed, gave us $120,000. And we really maximized these $120,000. And is spread over 3 countries, South Korea and India and Malaysia. Okay, so we know exactly in South Korea, who are your players? So we have the infrastructure there. We also know that e-commerce is very important in that market. And we know specifically what e-commerce platforms are effective there. So we did frozen, we promoted at the retail level. Okay, and you can see the amount of increases we are receiving as we compare to the prior year or prior week. Okay. And in India, this is an introductory exploratory market for us, but there are a lot of opportunities. So we are supporting this market currently with the quality sample program with frozen and primarily with frozen samples. So we have already established a lot of relationships, and we supplemented this WBC funding to support. Did another level. We conducted a lot of one-on-one seminars with our industry folks and with food service and food manufacturers. We also did with our in-country market representatives. He did a lot of one-on-one business meetings. So we are looking at product development in progress as we speaking. So once this, in the end of the year, we will provide another update to Alan. Okay. Malaysia, food service, very actually similar to India, introductory stage for us, exploratory market for us. Food service sector is very important there. So we're actively participating, partnering with 6 companies right now. We're making manual development. And we also just created a very successful seminars. Okay, Alan showed you some pictures earlier. Now I am going to actually show you how this, if I can get this play. So this is a video. I might need some help and we can come back to this later. But when we come back to this later, I'll show you how we are actually, how the seminar is actually like the live audience. Okay. All right, got it. It's not playing. Oh, it's starting. Okay, here we go. Thank you. Okay. All right, so couple of call out here. You can see that we involved the FAS individuals who spoke at the very beginning, because very important we get them involved because they potentially can help us to get more funding for future years. We also made sure that we ordered samples so those who are attending the seminar could actually enjoy and experience and as they're listening to the seminar. So and you're looking at export data for right now. As you can see, for the 2024 year to date, it's only till August. So we're trending really, really strong for in the export. And we will definitely, I think for 2025, with our vision, our goal is to really strive for even better years in 2025. Okay, so how many of you know that at USHBC, we have a website just designated for exporters? And if you don't know, you should, this is a link for you. If you log on to this link, you can find all the great information, researches, and MR data that Alyssa mentioned earlier. And the first thing you notice once you get onto the website is an export database. And this database can set you up really to get you started on how to export. We have 28 markets covered, and it has, for every single market, it talks about trade issues, tariff, competitions, and each of these markets, the product distribution, logistics, coaching, and consumer preferences. So I really strongly encourage you guys to take a look at these resources. And another piece I want to remind all of you guys, we do have a supplier database. If you don't know what I'm talking about, perhaps you're not in the supply database, but I think you should really do that. You should be part of our supply database. We share this with all the importers from around the world. When we create those seminars, when we do marketing, and they get interested about our product, and the importers, the food service manufacturers want to buy from us, well, we share this with them, and they will contact you if you are on this list. So, and I will strongly encourage you to take a look at that. And if you're not on this list, please contact me. All right, I know my time is limited, so I'm going to speed talk now from this point on, okay? Very quickly for 2024, current year, our updates here. For this year, we have our total budget is around 1.8 and grant 711,000. That's made up of MAP program and a quality sample program. So we are supporting India and Malaysia with our QSP program. And all of these resources are really used throughout these 4 pillars here. Consumer marketing, that's predominantly social media, influencer marketing, and then our trade communications, and then retail promotions. And lastly is our engagement with our food service, food manufacturers. So now I'm just going to call out some success stories here. In 2024, we participated on behalf of industry and the AFL in Hong Kong. Very successful event, trade show. All of our market representatives from the 7 countries actually participated. We made market business appointments. More than 60 business appointments were concluded in our trade show booths for 2025. And the date is September 3rd to the 5th. So if you plan to attend this trade show, please let me know. We'll help you to make a market appointments to connect you with importers throughout all of our export markets. And second is a trade show mission that we participated in March this year. You can see Alan and Brian actually was part of the team. We're still waiting for our list for 2025. We will share that with you. And again, we would love to see some of you to go out to be part of the tours and to visit some of the countries with us in 2025. And retail promotions, very, very important in all of our markets here. And we have seen a lot of great successes. And but it's important that I'm in the process of planning the retail promotions with retailers in the foreign markets right now. We need to know the supply. It would really help us to know that the goods will be there or when will be there. So we can have more conversations on that later. Okay. And lastly is engaging on the food service and food manufacturing side. In Southeast Asia, actually in Japan, and this is very important. So we're actually building up proposals for next year. We are seeing very great successes already at this point. Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for your time and to allow me the opportunity to speak to you today. And I hope you you feel good about what we're doing, and hopefully that we can work. I'm looking forward to working closely with all of you guys. I think together we can really drive up the demand for USA blueberries in the world. Thank you very much.
Check 1. Okay, great. Thank you, Hai-Ying, and great to be with everyone here today. My name is Casey Cronquist, and I'm fortunate to work with both Hai-Ying and Alyssa and our team who isn't here on the work that goes on behalf of NABC and USHBC, the North American Blueberry Council and the US High Bush Blueberry Council. And I know many of you because I've been up here for the last 5 years as I've served as president of both organizations, and got to know many of you and got to know this business and understand a lot of what we're looking to try to accomplish as an industry. And so I just wanted to take this, and Alan, thank you for the invitation to be here today, the opportunity to talk about some of the big conversations we're having at the USHBC, which if you're familiar with Steakhouse 9, there was a good conversation we had just Tuesday night here. This was a follow-up meeting from the town halls we've been holding across the country, talking about basically the challenge facing the industry. And well, I think you're hearing, and I will talk more about the success we've had in the work we've done and the work we continue to do with the resources that we have. What we're talking about at the council level is what's really needed to solve the challenge that we all face ahead. So I'm going to do my best to still stand here because I'm afraid of stages, and try to click through this. There we go. And talk a little bit about why we're here. You know, why I came up earlier with our, Kevin Hamilton was with me, Joe Vargas, who does our business intelligence, and working alongside what is now the assessment steering committee, is really looking at what is it going to take to drive this category forward? You know, why do we feel like we're at the crossroads we're at today as an industry? And what's it going to take to ensure that the industry continues to be both successful and, most importantly, profitable? And so now Alan and I talked about this short time I've got here to just say, you know, Alan's suggestion is, hey, you know, if you're going to raise the assessment to 2.5 cents, promise them 5 cents and you won't have any problems. I'm not going to do that. I can't promise that you're going to make 5 cents off of anything that I do, because it depends on what we all do, what you do, who you're working with, the retailers, the varieties, the format, the harvesting. There's so many variables in what goes on in this business. But what I can tell you that we do is we create the greatest opportunity for everybody who's in this category to have the greatest amount of success possible, given the supply and demand economics that we all face in this business. It's agriculture, it's supply and demand. And we're at this place where what we've been doing has got us to this moment, but what we need to do next is going to take more than we've got to move things forward. So why we're here is we're an organization that's designed to inspire consumers. We're an organization that is here to execute those programs with success. And I think you've seen examples of that. What I loved about Alan's talk, and he set me up really well, is he said, I don't trust marketing because it's so difficult to measure. And then he went on to explain how well they did to be able to measure the success of their marketing. Marketing is measurable. We can be successful. We have been successful. You can be more successful than you are today. And we can measure that success over time, and we have. So there can be a lot more greater prosperity to growers. But again, like it says here, problems can be opportunities when the right people come together. And the good news is that USHBC was started in 2000 by growers to come together to solve for a problem they knew would come by just grow, grow, grow. And that's what growers do. That's the idea, is we grow the product for the market. But you also have to have a market. You have to have a place to put all those berries. And our job is to try to find a home for all those berries. Fresh, frozen, dried. We're responsible for opening up those markets, whether they're global markets or domestic channels. And so we work in all those channels. And I know many of you met Kevin Hamilton last year, but we have the same goals as an organization with everybody in this room on wanting to make sure that the prosperity of the success we have with the product you're growing has a place to go. And we've experienced recently the difficulty of the supply. And what we've done is we've done a lot of work working with people that we've worked with in the past, particularly Dr. Kaiser and Cornell. Might have messed that up. But I don't want to pretend that we haven't been reporting on the successes what we've had as an industry. So really quickly, we've built a solid foundation. You know, we've reported on that foundation for years, but you've grown this to a 49% of households. We've seen an increase of penetration just in the 18 to 23, about 6%. You've seen the increase of the prior year of households buying blueberries at 1.7%. So the reason I highlight this is when we were talking at the steakhouse or any of these meetings, I don't want for a minute anybody to believe that we're not investing resources that don't get measured on the back end, that we're not trying to make sure that what we're doing with the resources aren't accomplishing the goal that you've set for this organization. And you've been successful. But the challenge is we're continuing to see increasing growth in places around the world. And therefore, when we're talking about what more you could do with doing more, having more resources to do more, we want to make sure that, you know, the research that we're providing you, which is the guy that does this every 5 years for USHBC since its inception, has been able to come back with reports every 5 years that USDA requires to show that for every dollar we spend, returns this many dollars back to the marketplace. And so recently we asked Dr. Kaiser, who's been doing these studies for the industry that predates me as your president, to look forward. Instead of just doing the report back that tells us how well we did with what we had, tell us what we're going to need to do in order to keep up with the supply that's coming. And so the same guy who does these 5-year studies went to work for us to help us predict what was going to happen. And then this slide's kind of misplaced, but what we're trying to accomplish is how are we going to inspire the success of the future? Because we needed to know how much money is that going to take in order to bring the consuming audience to the category over the next 5 to 7 years. But what we understood was that success was going to require innovation. And so when we had him take a look at what we believe the volume challenge is over time, You can see in this that this isn't Dr. Kaiser's work. This is the work of asking all the people who either have plants in the ground or aware of production coming into the United States from fields who would be marketing into the United States. We can see that there's 500 million pounds at retail today, and they project a doubling of that over the next 5 to 7 years, based on yields, based on growth, based on the conversation that Alan had when he first started his talk, predicting 180 million pounds, but you're going to be over 200 million pounds. Where's all this fruit going to go? And how are you going to account for what equates to a doubling of the market by 2030? So these are the sources of the information that we go out and gather using Joe's work, business intelligence, and trying to give that back to Dr. Kaiser to say, well, if you're going to have a doubling of that market over the next 5 years, how much money are you going to need to spend through that volume? How are you going to move that pile? So that's why we came together as an industry, both in 2000 and today, to try to determine what can that resource do to make sure that we have a brighter future together. Because the challenge is as much as I do think that that marketing can be valuable and measured, you have to have enough marketing power, firepower essentially, to be able to reach the consumers that you're trying to get to come to the category, because we've already driven awareness at a really high level. And you heard Haiying talk a little bit about the funnel that you're trying to take the consumer through. And what blueberries really needs more than anything right now is desire. You got to create the crave. You got to spend the resources that make people desire blueberries, crave blueberries, want to make it not just a one-time purchase, because right now you're at about 6.4 pounds a year for those households who are buying it today. And of those households who are buying it today, that 6.4 pounds, those 20% of those purchasers make up 60% of the dollar spend. So what I'm pointing out here is it's starting to get really niche as to who we're actually selling our blueberries to today. And yet there's this huge consumer group that's still out there who's not buying either enough or not finding enough occasions, whether that's later in the day part, because we do really well in the morning, but we don't do really well in the afternoon or evening, or they're just not buying it frequently enough. So we've got to spend the resources to bring that consumer back to the category more often. And we don't want to do it for less. Quite frankly, you don't need the US HBC to move the pounds. You can move the pounds. It's just going to be at what price? And so we've got a dual mandate as an organization to not only just move the pounds, but we got to maintain a high value so that those returns that we're talking about are as high as possible. The opportunity that you have is as great as possible to get as much return back to the farm as you can. And that's why this investment is so important. So again, working with Dr. Kaiser and Joe, we've built out the models that kind of help us understand where you'd be today. And again, these are blended resource numbers. It's a macroeconomic analysis. It's taking what data that Dr. Cornell has and what Joe's giving him in terms of forecasted future. Again, that doubling of retail over time, and just kind of playing out the analysis of if you did nothing, which is the low blue line, you would be going from $1, it's hard to see with the pixelation, 90 over to $1.93. And that is just doing nothing. That's keeping a 9/10 of a penny spend, marketing spend over time with that kind of supply coming in. And of what this is saying is, if you did that, you would find yourself 44 cents less than where you would need to be just to maintain where you are right now. Split that in half. Let's just say it's 22 cents. I don't think anybody in here is going to be satisfied 5 years, 6 years from now with 22 cents less per pound. And again, this is blended for fresh and frozen, but it's total volume in the marketplace. That's the market cap that you would lose, 2 billion pounds between that valuation and the $2.37. And what the yellow line represents is that 2.5 cents that we've been talking about as an industry. We're talking about with the steering committee. We're talking about it with the board. We're telling all of you here that it's that power that you need. That's the ammunition you have to have in order to maintain, again, this model over that period of time against that volume. So it's just going to show us that there's a need in increasing the investment in marketing in order to basically create an opportunity of maintaining margin over time. And for domestic growers, this is really important because other countries have the margin to lose that you don't. So this isn't as big of a threat to them if they lose margin. But for domestic growers, this needs to be of serious concern because we don't have the margin to lose. We can't go over the next 5 years continuing to see the degradation of value over time due to supply. So we've done that homework and we've been analyzing this, but this is where you see the one pager that I have in the back that I encourage you guys to take home is basically your invitation to the conversation that shows that kind of investment returns 10 times the amount of money you put into the program that you'd get back into the market for you to have the biggest opportunity possible to earn that 5 cents back into your pocket. Again, I can't guarantee you the 5 cents. What we can do is increase the market dynamics and the demand level, shift that demand curve so that the supply doesn't degrade your price. It doesn't do what supply and demand economics otherwise would suggest. And so again, that 215 over that period of time would maintain $2.1 billion in value into the blueberry industry. Does that make sense? That's the basic fundamental math, is just saying that this kind of investment, which we've been studying for the past 20 years, elevated, would help assure the industry against the volume that's coming in, the ability to maintain the value of the product over that period of time through marketing, through advertising. And we've been talking about the options you have, which are do nothing about it, or you could continue to just invest in the farm, just invest in what you're doing today, just improve genetics, improve post-harvest, add a harvester, add a sorter, those kinds of things. Certainly, we're not even discouraging you to continue to do that. Those are important things. Those are the things that help differentiate farms with their marketers, with their retailers, but that's not solving for the bigger problem. Then the option number 3 is grow demand. You know, spend the kind of resources it takes to kind of move the needle that you need to move in order to assure this 2.1 billion in the marketplace. So what we need to do is we need to get more people to buy more blueberries at the premium price. What we're trying to do is not take away, we're not trying to degrade the price. We're trying to get more people to buy more blueberries more often at that premium price. So how do you do that? Well, our approach is to reintroduce blueberries as beyond health, beyond the morning, beyond being an ingredient, and beyond function. When Haiying was up here talking about the funnel and how you get people into the purchase and how you get them to take action, we need to create desire. We need to create the opportunity for them to have blueberries, and marketing solves for that. Marketing is the way you do what Haiying was talking about internationally, but you do it domestically. You repeat the message, and you do it in such a way that is so compelling that they have to have it. They feel compelled to go to the store and make that one more purchase. Because that's really what this is about, is we know who our audience is, and I don't want to pretend that there's not information about this. We've got great data on who it is that we're targeting in these categories. We also know who our target audience is that we need to move from being medium users to heavy users. We also know what that kind of message might need to look like in order to compel them into the space to buy that one more clamshell. And so this is a good example of just kind of the data that we've collected over time that shows, and most people don't know, a white male is actually your super user. At the very top of who eats blueberries, both every day and multiple times a day, is kind of your CrossFit bro guy who really recognizes the value of eating healthy. And even though he may not be the purchaser at home, he's the one that's consuming it both in the morning, in the lunch part. That's the consumer we want for everybody. But when we did our research on understanding who our market is, we found that the super user is basically a male household, somebody who cares about their health and has a household income over 100,000, et cetera, et cetera. So this is also not new news that we collect. I mean, we've been doing this for years. But the point I'm sharing with you is that we're drilling down on what money that you need to then continue to attract these consumer groups into the category. So I don't want to, some of the questions that I've been getting is, well, what are you going to do with the money? How are you going to spend the money? Well, a big part of that, and it's outlined in the one pager on the way back, is the brand premium advertising spend bucket that we don't spend today. Why? Because these kinds of activities are super expensive. They just are. I'm not saying we're doing any of these activities, by the way, but what I'm showing you is that we've studied what these types of audiences are attracted to. And so we would be looking at these types of opportunities with those kinds of dollars that we don't have the affordability to get into today, that you would need to get into in order to be able to attract that consumer in that frequency that gets them back into the category and allows you to buy into that media space that we can't afford today. Now, again, we've done really well with the resources we've had. We participated in Major League Pickleball last year. We were on linear television with Pickleball TV. How many of you watch Pickleball TV? I rest my case. So again, it doesn't mean we didn't reach some audiences, and quite frankly, to be fair, you're not necessarily all our demographic. But my point is media buys are what get the attention and the frequency and into the places in the households that you need that we're talking about for blueberries. Competing at the level that blueberries deserves to compete at as a commodity, as a category, as a specialty crop, you need to invest in yourself. That is the resource spend that deserves to be in places and spaces that those consumers are, that you need to attract to the category that you're not getting to today, either by frequency or at all. So again, please don't, I mean, maybe somebody took a picture of this, but I'm only sharing this as an example, right? I'm just trying to say that where we need to go to do what you need to have happen in order to attract the audiences that you want to have buying more often is spending into the places and spaces that companies, as Alan rightly pointed out, knows advertising works, knows that marketing works. We can measure when we go to make that investment, did it return a value back to the industry? And of course, we can also make adjustments when they don't. One of the good examples that we had recently that, again, when I get asked the questions like, well, show us what's worked. I mean, you've heard from Haiying. We have examples of examples about things we do that we know work. What we're talking about is taking what we know works and multiplying it and scaling it so that we can have the ability to reach more people with those resources than we do today. This is a good example. Charlotte, North Carolina. We put a multi-faceted marketing plan in place for the Charlotte market with Harris Teeter, a retailer in North Carolina. And what we did is the challenge you can see here was 29% of households in Charlotte had purchased blueberries in the past year, 20 points below the average. So we took a really weak region and we decided to test what marketing could do. And again, not a shock that when you spend money marketing to humans and making them desire the product or think about the product or bring them into the category, they get their wallets out. So the results of this campaign, we did a full integrated multi-month test, and it included television and radio, et cetera, all the way through the shopper marketing experience, which means they were getting pinged on their phone, they were getting digital ads sent to them through Facebook, et cetera. We knew who we were targeting and we were getting to them. And when you do all this, and it's not cheap, you get these kinds of results. And we can replicate this. Alan shared examples that they're doing here in Washington. The issue is scale. The issue is being able to do it all the time and do it as often as you can with as much resources as you can afford in order to make sure that you're getting to the audience that you're trying to get to. So we saw a 2.7 to 1 return on that investment. What I like about this, and it's hard to read, that we saw 80,000 new buyers of blueberries during that period of time. That's what we're talking about, is being able to spend to get those audiences to come into the category and enjoy those types of results nationally. So again, I get lots of questions about, okay, so it's going to go from 9/10 of a penny to 2.5 cents. What are you going to do with all that money? What we've done simply is just kind of break down what we're not doing today. What you're not doing today, and if Kevin was here, he'd do a much better job. Kevin's our Vice President of Global Business or Global Marketing and Communications, but he would explain his experience having ran the Avocados from Mexico program as one of the first of 4 employees for that, and watched what his ability to spend into those markets could do for the category and the growth they saw in investing in brand value advertising. For them, that meant Super Bowl. It's not what we're saying for blueberries, but for them, that was the investment they made with those kinds of dollars early on. And the dividends back to the industry have continued to pay back to the avocado space over and over and over again. They did that ad 7 times or did that marketing spend 7 times. And they continue to be successful now, graduating from just the Super Bowl. I'm not sure they're going to do that again this year, but what they've done is they've continued to invest in those demographics at a level that continues to maintain the high value of the avocado over time. So taking that experience and understanding this business that we're in on your behalf, that's why we're saying right now we don't spend anything in that sort. We don't have the budget. It just doesn't exist. So we spend our money in places and spaces that we can afford. And again, I'm telling you, we're doing really well with what resources we have in order to provide a return of that investment with what we're trying to accomplish. But what we're saying against that volume and what you're seeing in that Cornell study is the problem and solution strategy that we're presenting to audience, as many audiences as we can, to talk about it. So the one pager in the back is not, the full information that I just gave you here. And we've got more information beyond this that helps our board understand the circumstances that we face that warrant the need to have the conversation about how much more resources you need to spend to accomplish the goal of profitability for our farms. And that's what this is about. And so that's why I'm here, and we'll continue to come back to Washington. I always appreciate Alan's invitation. We threw the Steakhouse 9 to dinner pretty quick, but that's because I know people have questions, and I don't want people to feel like there aren't answers. And I want to make sure that our team is available to be able to provide you guys with the information that you need, so that when the board does get to the decision about what the investment level needs to be, they've heard from everybody. We're listening. I was listening on Tuesday night. I know that the form matters. So meaning that processed berries get less than the fresh berries, which makes 2.5 cents on processed a lot more difficult than it is on fresh. We're listening. I also heard on Tuesday that it's really disappointing that we didn't invest in increasing the assessment earlier. Why are we going to so much so fast? Well, I don't know how many of you appreciate the analogy of not considering the investment in your retirement fund until you turn 55, and then you've got to double down because you didn't put enough in the beginning. These are the kinds of catch-up moments that we're talking about because you didn't. Why didn't you do it? Well, we can look back and complain that that should have been something that was considered, but this isn't a small ask. And this isn't a small ask, not for just USHBC to move forward with USDA to do this, but it's not a small ask for everybody in this room to consider what this cost is. It wouldn't have been that small 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we were in the middle of a 201 investigation and nobody was talking to anybody. So right now we've got the opportunity to stay together, figure this out, and try to use the cooperative effort of these resources that only 22 programs in the world really have access to, and uniting an industry to build the kind of demand pool of resources that you need to accomplish the goal. And I don't want to make light of what Alan's budget is trying to accomplish for domestic marketing, but that's not going to get it done. Even if you took your dollars and put it to just a Washington promotion program, you won't have enough firepower to reach the audience, to make the marketing efforts, to try to do the work that you need to do to attract the audience that you need to deal with the volume that's coming. This is a unified issue, and we need to stay unified on the solution, because bringing that a level of capital together is what makes the biggest difference. Making sure you can pound that message back to the consumer the same way every time, not all different ways, not scattered, the same way every time, making them want to desire the category, desire the blueberry. That's what differentiates you. That's what makes this powerful. Working together is what works. And so we're obviously proud to work on your behalf to make this happen. And of course, I think we've got an excellent team, probably the best team we've ever had to help execute the next several years and future ahead. But we do need to work together on deciding what we can afford to do and commit to that so that we can do these types of activities. So I'm happy to answer questions. This is a really important opportunity. We're at a crossroads, and I invite you to take that one pager that's on the table in the back as your invitation to get involved with asking these questions and getting the answers you need in order to make the best decision possible. It is true that the board makes the ultimate decision. So the board is the party responsible for voting for the increase. So you've each got representatives in who sit on that board. But they want to hear from you. It's a representative governance. They are your eyes and ears at the council, representing your voice on whether or not any initiative is the one that you want to see move forward. So Brian Sakuma, Nathan Sakuma, both up here representing positions on the board for Washington and Western United States. But I also would say that we're open to answering questions that you have, and want to make sure that you feel like we're listening and we're approachable on answering the questions that you have about initiatives like this. So with that, I'll stop and answer questions. Yeah.
Just early on in the presentation on the marketing, it was said that there's USA blueberries and blueberries in general. So I'm looking at your hat. I don't see USA blueberries. It's just blueberries. So what's your focus there? Because that makes a big difference in what we're doing.
Yeah, so what Haying's pointing out is that when we go to those export markets on behalf of the RAP and MAP resources, that is 100% USA play. And so what those dollars are set aside for is why that USA logo is what we play as prominent in those markets, because our application on your behalf for those dollars to do those activities is a USA marketing play. When I'm at the USHBC domestically, we have importers that are providing assessments where the spend in the United States is a generic marketing play. So we have to maintain a generic marketing play here in the United States. But when we go to the other countries, we're allowed to use those dollars to market just USA.
Well, I don't think it makes sense. In the domestic market, we've got £1 billion coming in from Peru, and we're promoting, you're raising our assessments so we can promote those?
No. So the USHBC is raising its assessments from anybody who's in the US market. So the USHBC collects assessments from primarily Canada, Peru, Mexico, and Chile, and the US. So that's what makes the RMP. But when the RMP goes to other countries, we can take grant dollars, and that's Haying's work, to go into these other markets, and then we market USA blueberries. So that's the nuance there, that we have the ability to use our assessment dollars, match those with grant opportunities that allow us to go to those other countries and market USA blueberries. In the United States, our focus as an RMP is what the law allows for, which collects dollars from all those other countries who are in this market. Kind of consider it their first tariff to play, right? It's the first requirement they have to be in the market is to pay an assessment to the U.S. Highbush Blueberry Council, so we can do all that work.
Still like the idea of USA blueberries as opposed to blueberries.
Yeah, well, so in other parts of the world, yes, but in the United States, the success you've had in the category has been to provide consumers with 365 days of blueberries. And so the consumer is less focused, and retailers, quite frankly, on origin, because they're trying to maintain, it's only been a recent 10 years where you've been able to get blueberries on the shelf 365 days a year. That's been probably one of the greatest tools of growing the category that you've had, is being able to maintain the shelf space as a category, so that, again, when the domestic industry rolls around, you've got a consuming group who's been consuming the product throughout the entire year. They've never left the category. So we're mandated to both collect on imports and be neutral in our promotion of origin. So we don't do Peru, we don't do Mexico, we don't split that up. And I wouldn't encourage you to split it up either, because the best bang for the buck is just to get the consumer to eat blueberries. And then again, everybody in this room has a great chance to go after winning that business.
We can agree to disagree on that.
That's fine. I don't have choices. It's just what we do.
Sorry, I was right.
Yeah.
Do you have data or numbers on the ads on Amazon and Netflix and YouTube that are being run right now or going to be played in the future? Like marketing on
We
Netflix,
collect, yeah. So
on Netflix, Amazon, and YouTube.
yeah.
They have those 10-second or 5-second ads, when you're watching a show every 20 minutes.
Yeah.
or
So what's the question?
No, I'm saying,
Do we collect the data?
No, are we in there?
Yes. When we have had both YouTube marketing ads, so all those are media buys, right? Where you're placing your spots in Netflix, any of those places. So we do get that data back from those channels when we market in those spaces. Yeah, absolutely. And anything we would do going forward, those media people would promise the return of the data back on times they've played, how much audience reach we got. So if that's what you're asking, is that what you're asking? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Rob.
Hey, Casey. Hey, so a couple things. I didn't see your entire presentation, but I know the other night you mentioned per capita consumption is 3.8 pounds. Is
No,
that
less than 3 pounds.
less than 3 pounds? Does that include just fresh, or does it include frozen and fresh, or is it just fresh?
It's just a category, less than 3, so it's both.
Good. So based on the first gentleman's question on marketing USA blueberries, which was another thing that was brought up the other night, you can market USA blueberries domestically if you have a federal market order.
We're not a federal marketing order.
No, you're not, but that's the other option, right? Like if we
So-
create a federal marketing order and took some money and put it into that federal market order, not so much the USHBC, we could actually market USA blueberries.
Yes and
domestically.
no. So we've met as an organization and as an industry to look at federal marketing orders, and there is ability to use that resource to market, but then there's also the ability to set the grades and standards. That's what marketing orders are generally for, is to set a grade and standard for the industry. And the other thing that makes that a difficult pill to swallow for domestic producers is that instead of having the people who are in the market helping fund the market, it's only a domestic industry that then funds the marketing order.
Yeah, I know, I understand that, right? It's just really, I think there's plenty of people here just like, hey, we need to sell USA blueberries in the US, right? So it's like, how do we go about doing that? So it's either the states commissions raise their assessments and get together and create a marketing opportunity for USA blueberries, or federal marketing order, you don't have to do the grades and standards, but it still allows you to, I mean, that's kind of the beef checkoff thing, right? I mean, it's all about supporting US beef growers.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what you're asking, but again, the group, the task force that came around looking at that during the 201 investigation, there wasn't enough essentially nationwide domestic interest in executing against that plan, because you would essentially lose the investment that is coming in from the imported fruit. So in order to, again, the problem isn't so much that the consumer needs to orient themselves around the origin. I know that that feels that way for this group in this room right now. The issue is you don't have enough consumers, and that's really where the opportunity lies in buying the product generally. So you're not at a place, and maybe years from now you would say differently, where you've saturated the market such that now you just need to be pie fighters. The opportunity you really have is to stay together with those who are in your market, to force those folks who are in this market to pay to play in the market to grow the pie. And you need as much resource as possible to do that. And obviously the fear that they had then and the concerns they had with who would be forced to pay for that was just going to be the domestic industry. And therefore you would lose the ability to amass the resource you really need to attract the consumer that you really can get to draw them to the category. And again, the divisiveness at retail for origin-based marketing is what also comes up for retailers who, in my experience, get really uncomfortable with origin-based marketing that they don't necessarily maintain in the category 365 days a year. So again, frozen would be different because you can keep that on the shelf 365 days a year. But in fresh, that retailer, pick your favorite one, is going to be agnostic and remains agnostic on where it comes from. It's been my experience in floral before I got into blueberries, impossible to tell them what to do and tell them that, this has to go like this in order for us to invest in your, retail space. So if you were at a maturation level where, you were at a place where it was time to just break this all apart and go into pie fighting mode, then it would be a different conversation. But the reality is that you're really still working with it less than 3 pounds per household, only 6.4 pounds of those people who are eating blueberries today. The real opportunity is to spend the resource you need to get people to the category and want them to buy one more unit, fresh or frozen, and making sure that the people who are in this market are paying for it, including those imports who are participating in the research and promotion program. So that was what dissuaded them then. And again, you can always keep revisiting federal marketing orders, but it had been talked about in 2021 and then decided at the time that it wasn't the best way to try to accomplish the goal going forward.
All right. So I got one last thing. No, because I had this conversation with Casey, right? So, it was really about who's got fresh blueberries in the fridge right now, right? So if all the blueberry growers in this room could raise their hand, every one of you. Okay, so how many of you have fresh blueberries in the fridge right now? 2 of them, 3 of them. So there's a lot of work to do, right? I mean, you're talking to blueberry growers and you can't penetrate fresh into their households. I think there's a big challenge.
Are you suggesting that our target audience is trying to get US growers to put foreign fruit into their fridge?
No, not at all. I'm just, it's
Because that's not our demographic.
no, it is. But I mean, your own growers are not buying, fruit that's available right now that's fresh. I mean, we all have frozen in our fridge. I think
Okay.
it's just something
Yeah,
that needs to be
I
looked at.
can't, that's not our audience. And we wouldn't win with trying to get that audience to be convinced that if they think that's their competition, you should bring it into their household. You know what I'm saying? Like what we're saying is there's 300 million people in the United States that don't know blueberries, just like in the world, don't understand the power and the benefit of eating blueberries. Our opportunity is still to drive the awareness, create the desire, and create the demand that we haven't been able to create as a category to get to what avocados has, which is 12 pounds per household over 10 years. That's what money buys. That's the opportunity that's still ahead for this category. And so anyway, I don't want to debate him here, but I'm just saying, like, let's not forget, let's maintain the bigger picture opportunity that exists out there, because it isn't going to be whether or not blueberry farmers in Washington have fresh blueberries in their fridge. It's us as an industry trying to get consumers who aren't eating blueberries or aware of the power of blueberries to put them in their fridge. And let the
Or
business
freezer. Or freezer.
or freezer. Okay, look, I'm happy to stick around and continue the conversation with those who have questions. We really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I always appreciate Rob's comments and would be happy to answer any more questions that you have before you go. So thank you so much, Alan, and thank you for having our team here to talk to you about growing the category. Thank you.
The next session will start at 3 and 3:30 and is eligible for 1 pesticide credit.
Where are you going next? In October. Yeah, it'll all be. Okay. I got my own roast. That's the easy part of it. The answering lots, like we all have our own for dinner freezers. Yeah, so we don't need to put those by. Such a crazy story. Hey, down like as much as we think.